From the Beaver County Auto Studios, it's another live Penguins chat. I am Dan Kingerski. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Let me tell you what happened real quick here. You ever have those nights I fell asleep early? Like, I've slept this week, and it's thrown my system entirely into chaos. Thanks, bye week. So I woke up at 3 a.m. wide awake, so I started writing. Then I fell asleep at like 6 or 7 a.m., finished up the Jamie Oleksiak piece, which I hope you've read on Pittsburgh Hockey Now, then realized it was 12:15. Uh-oh. Let me run downtown to the studio. So here we are. 10 or so minutes late, but better late than never. Thank you all for joining us. Do me a favor, use the chat board there on YouTube. On the right side, the live chat, I will take your questions. In fact, it's much more fun if you participate instead of me blathering. It's better, yeah. It's better when you take me where you want to go instead of me kind of going through it. Now, we can start with Jamie Oleksiak, because that's what I just wrote about today at noon. Maybe you had a chance to read it, maybe not. Essentially, it's a complex puzzle. Here's the 9 Penguins healthy defensemen. And I did a short video on Pittsburgh Hockey Now, yes. You can sing the Brady Bunch theme song with me. Till the one day when the lady... Yeah. I almost made an animation out of it. Like, okay, now they'll string me up by my toes. But you see... obviously, Chad Ruedel is at the back end of all of this, and that leaves 8. I mean, they've carried 8, but they really don't need to. And I don't think they want to lose Ruedel for nothing. Otherwise, they send him down to Wilkes-Barre, problem solved. But you still have this logjam of defenders. And that's what I think Jim Rutherford both realizes the opportunity in that. He hasn't said he's going to deal a defenseman. Well, a general manager would never say such a thing, but he has admitted he probably has to. He probably has to deal with that. Now, there are a few things kind of floating around in terms of Penguins scenarios and the defense. You look at, let's focus on Oleksiak, and that's what I guess that's what I came for, right? There it is. Because Oleksiak right now is part of that 5, 6, 7 crew. He's the number 7 defenseman. But he's got real value. And I looked, I went over the last 2 years of the trade market. I felt that was the most relevant, going back to 2015-16, before the Penguins upended everything, might not give us the truest picture. So I did 16-17 and the trade deadline of 17-18, just to get a sense. The reality is there's not been a defenseman comparable to Jamie Oleksiak who is also under contractual control. Ian Cole was dealt from Ottawa to Columbus. He got a 3rd-round pick. And, Ron Hainsey, also a UFA to be, went from Carolina to the Penguins for a 2nd-round pick back at the 17 deadline. You had other deals like Jordy Ben for Greg Pattern. It's hard to draw any conclusions or any value statement from that. The closest I came, Michael Stone, who was in Arizona. Obviously playing in Arizona, not a lot of us see him play or saw him play a lot. He was dealt to Calgary at the 17 deadline for a 3rd-round pick. So, but he was also a UFA to be. Jamie Oleksiak's contractual control, I think, adds significant value to the player. Not just his skill set and the fact that he's, got out of Dallas, got out of that rut and that situation. He really flourished last year. I thought he had a really good year. And so I think you set the market on Jamie Oleksiak. Here, I'm going to save you the time to read the article. Just click on it anyway. Just click on it, leave it up for about 2 minutes. Hook me up. And then I think I've set the value at Oleksiak individually at a second-round pick. And that's kind of where I see it going. I actually forgot that I had the picture up. Oops. There I go. Now, the other part of that is if Oleksiak is the guy the Penguins are going to deal, if that's the card that Rutherford wants to play and figures, his puzzle is better with the other 7 guys, then you can also start talking about packaging Oleksiak, a left-handed defenseman, with this guy. Where is he? There he is, Derek Brassard. That suddenly becomes an interesting package, doesn't it? We know the Winnipeg Jets, at least Pittsburgh Hockey Now knows that the Winnipeg Jets are shopping for a second-line center and a left-handed defenseman. Now, getting a good return from Winnipeg, that seems to be the more difficult thing. I used to be a big champion of Adam Lowry, their third-line center, but his offensive stats have not progressed, I think, like a lot of us projected them to. I haven't looked in a couple weeks. Maybe he's gone on a heater, but he really was not scoring commensurate with what the Penguins would need for a third-line center role. Now, I don't know if you saw this. I can watch Canadian broadcasts through various technological means that a lot of other people can't. And last night on Insider Trading, TSN, Pierre LeBrun dropped a little nugget that the Penguins and Carolina are obviously talking about Michael Furland, the power forward that Carolina acquired from Calgary in the Dougie Hamilton deal. The interesting thing about that is LeBrun said one thing that could happen is the Penguins send Brassard to Carolina as an asset to flip as part of the deal. But LeBrun also mentioned a number 1 pick that Carolina wants. That seems like a ridiculous ask for a UFA-to-be who wants to test the market. A first-round pick and an asset like that, that's too rich. So perhaps, look, if that's the deal, then I think the Penguins are full well able to lower that draft pick ask and actually remove it entirely. If you do the math, if the Penguins complied with Carolina, it's not going to happen, but let's just pursue this line of thinking. That would mean Brassard cost the Penguins a 2018 first-round pick, a goalie prospect who isn't doing so well in Belleville, the American Hockey League, but I hear they have a pretty rough team as well. So he cost them a first, a franchise goalie prospect, Ian Cole, and Ryan Reeves, plus then he would cost them another draft pick coming up. That's far. That's a money pit, brother. Okay, let me hit some questions here. Mutation. Hey, yeah, my housing situation gets all settled. The apartment is finally ready next week. I am so excited to get back into a home. Although the Airbnb I'm in with the surgical folks, they all left. Their residency ended mid-January. So I've got like this entire place to myself now. But no television, which is really weird. No, people are like, oh, I could live without a TV. I'm not one of them, apparently. I've been bouncing off the walls a little bit. I've been going to bars more often than I have in a while, just to watch TV. I'm getting like the old guys who have the $1.50 Bush Pounders at 7 a.m. just to watch some TV. Let's see here. Adam Lowry, 14 points through 46 games. Yeah, I'd like to see. Thanks, Medina, by the way, for putting Lowry's stats up. He actually did up them a little bit. He was like 10, 11 points a couple weeks ago. So it's 14. I mean, what do you think? That's essentially on pace for less than 30 points on the season. I think the Penguins need to do a bit better for their third-line center role. Tom Wilson eats urinal cakes. Caps fans are morons. Thanks for joining the chat. And Caps fans, I know, actually, I've got a pretty good following in D.C. I don't, the following was the preceding was a username and not the views of all those present. But what's he say? Good thing the Pens have had more than one defenseman out at the same time. Wilkes-Barre that deep on them to send oh, no, there's no defenseman, Wilkes-Barre, to send up. Zach Trotman, who you saw last year, would be really the closest that they've got, I think. It's slim pickings in terms of defense. TWEUCCFAM. I'll call you Tom Wilson. How's that? Melissa asks, when's the party? When I move in? Soon. So let's get back to, and keep using the chat board. Appreciate everybody there. I see the numbers climbing. I know whenever I'm late, it's always a lesser viewed chat, and that's just my own dumb ass fault. So the bye week has certainly made this week challenging in terms of coming up with original content every single day. But if we then take Jamie Oleksiak's potential to get a second-round pick in return, it's probably too much to ask for a first, because he's a middle, a middle pairing defenseman at best. Second or third pairing is not a first pairing. The alternative to dealing Jamie Oleksiak is dealing Oleksiak. And that's why I made this little graph for the other video last night. And by the way, mutation, I apologize. It's a good way to actually get to know the players' faces when I do this. That's Jack Johnson on the left, Oleksiak in the center, Jamie Oleksiak on the bottom, and Justin Schultz on the right. Let's say they go Mata. Mata brings about the same price. His contractual control, maybe his salary is a tick higher than some teams would want to pay. So there again, he gets a second-round pick. But if you deal Mata, you're kind of stranding Juuso Riikola a little bit, and that has to be considered. As much as I liked the Oleksiak-Schultz pairing, I thought that was dynamite last year. I know fans always point to late 2017 Mata and Schultz. The numbers were iffy on that pairing. My memory also told me there were things I didn't like about it back in 17 as well. There were a lot of things I didn't like about it. So let's kind of maybe meet in the middle on that one and say they weren't bad. Oleksiak and Schultz were really good last year. That's the pause that dealing Oleksiak gives me, because the default pairing, I think, is going to be Jack Johnson, Justin Schultz. That's what they set up to begin the season, without a right-handed third pairing defenseman. Oleksiak was supposed to fill that role. I like Schultz and Johnson a lot. I think that has great potential. But if it falters, we've seen Johnson struggle with a couple defensive partners. He and Mata were absolutely horrible together. I can't think of a worse Penguins defensive pairing. Two decent defenders who came together to form less than the sum of their parts, more so than that pairing. And the Penguins coaches realized that, and they've never been paired since. And that came about in November as well. It starts to be a puzzle. We can deal this guy, but then what about this other guy? So, truth be told, and this is where I waffle. I think I would go with in Jim Rutherford's shoes. I would choose to deal Mata because of the higher salary cap implications and keep Oleksiak. I don't think that's the Penguins' thinking, however. In fact, I almost am certain, based on what I've been told, that Ole Mata is no longer the preference. Yeah, Melissa notes that Cole and Schultz were really good. Yes, they were, weren't they? As long as I live, I will never quite understand what went down with that situation either. As long as it just made no sense. Almost like Brassard not producing as a third-line center role, which, let's turn the page and let's talk a bit about Derek Brassard. What do you all think of Brassard? And this goes to the group. I'd like to see your responses. Because I'm always a little bit intrigued by fan loyalties and emotions in this city in particular. I mean, let's be honest here. When we talk about Brassard, this guy has to pop into the conversation, Phil Kessel. How terrible they are, or were, on a line together. Phil Kessel's game is, as you know, incomplete. That we all noticed Phil was a back-checking demon at the end of the West Coast road trip tells you that, like, wow, we're like, oh my gosh, he's doing it. That I find interesting. But in supposedly a hard-nosed, gritty, blue-collar city, Kessel's not a gritty, blue-collar guy, but he's a deity in the hockey circles. Derek Brassard, who is a gritty, blue-collar, talented center, but Brassard hasn't won a cup, I guess. But what do you all think of Brassard and his inability to really adapt to the role the Penguins have asked of him? Does it make you sour, or do you understand? Or do you kind of throw your hands up and say, look, it just didn't work, move on, and you don't get involved in kind of the emotion of the deal? That I'm very interested and curious to get your takes on that. Let me find my name here. There I am. I wanted to get back there. And by the way, thank you to the 120 people who subscribed to our YouTube channel yesterday. It was, Mike Vukovcan. I would give him a standing ovation, who runs Pittsburgh Sports Now. Mike is he's got a knack for promotion and action. Like, some of us can create emotion. I can, for lack of a better term, some people call me a pot stirrer. I tend to bristle at that a bit, but let's just go with it for the moment. I can create attention, arouse emotion. I can make people kind of look at a story that I want to get into. Mike has an amazing ability to get people to follow through with an action. And Mike put out the call yesterday morning via Facebook. Hey, we're 90 subscribers away from this magical 1,000 plateau, which, thank you all, by the way. Once you cross that, YouTube will approve you to be monetized. That means money for Pittsburgh Sports Live. We love our sponsor, as you can see here. Beaver County Auto. They've got all of the manufacturers up there and a great deal. And if you mention us, they treat you just a little bit better, too, when they start writing the numbers. So if you're in the market for a car, go to beavercountyauto.com. But so once we monetize this, then you're going to see a lot more growth. Maybe even less shadows behind me. We've done this a little bit bare bones and shoestring just to get to that 1,000 so we can then continue to grow. We can perhaps, depending on how much the followers continue to grow, start to bring in specialized employees and reporters to alleviate some of the work from us, but that's probably another year away before we really get there. So thank you. Thank you. Let me roll back through the comments here. I know I threw that out too about Brassard. Keith asked, do you think Brassard and a D-man will be packaged together, or will they be moved in separate transactions? Keith, I don't know the answer to that. I think the market will tell the Penguins. I mean, I think they'll take a look at their offers and the suitors. They'll get the most. You know, they're not going to do something for convenience. I think a package will net them more. I don't know how much the Penguins value a second-round pick. Just being completely honest, they picked up a couple decent kids last year in the second round, Kalen Addison and Philip Helander. Helander's having a nice season in Sweden. He kind of flatlined in the World Juniors. No points in 5 games, 2 penalty minutes. Wasn't really noticeable in the couple of Sweden contests that I watched. I watched for him, and picking him out of the crowd was really difficult. That was disappointing. I wanted to see more. I wanted to see a second-round pick be able to step forward more, and I didn't see that from Helander. So, and Addison as well got bounced from the Canadian World Juniors squad tryouts pretty quickly. He didn't really make the finals or stay deep into the tournament this year. So, and by the way, the Penguins have not had a second-round pick make an impact with them over a long period of time since 1976. Greg Malone. The other closest second-round pick, Alex Goligoski, who played just over, I think, about 105 games for the Pens. And that's just off, maybe it was 200, but still, that's it. The Penguins have absolutely whiffed on second-round picks for 42 years. Being a Penguin second-round pick is the kiss of death. I'd rather be a seventh-round pick. You have a better shot than to make the NHL. The Penguins have done very well in the first round and the third round. Second round curse, man. It's craziness. Brad says, love Brassard, always have, but he just hasn't fit here like we needed. Trade made great sense at the time. Brad, it did. I cringe when I see everyone kind of go back and rewrite history. We never should have gotten rid of Cole and Ryan Reeves. That's kind of completely removing the context of the moment in which Reeves had been relegated to 5 minutes a night, and Ian Cole had been relegated to the press box a lot. And the Penguins are going to lose him for nothing. So the Penguins essentially cast off, you hate to say spare parts because they're two talented players, but in the Penguins' fit last year, that's just what it was. And what really hurt, I think, was the first-round pick. To lose that where the Penguins are right now. Perhaps that's, Keith, going back to the, packaging a defenseman, maybe the Penguins should break that out and deal some players for picks. Stockpile some draft picks. If you get 3 second-round picks, including your own, maybe you spin that off for a first-round pick. Or, it's time to replenish. Wilkes-Barre is barren. That's a AAA baseball joke, by the way. Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, but anyway. The prospects there, at best, the forwards may contribute to a Penguins third line in the next couple of years. Most likely, they're all fourth-line pluggers. What I've been told about, I'm drawing a blank on the, I call him the Tasmanian Devil, the centerman, fast. What the heck's his name? Someone, Teddy Bluger. What I've been told is his offense probably won't translate to the NHL level. And Adam Johnson has a tendency still to take a lot of shifts off. Johnson's older, though. He came from college. He's not 18. He's in his 20s, and so that concerns me greatly. And even so, I don't think he's got great hands. I think he's got great feet. DePauli, the injury bug just will not let him go. That poor guy, when I saw him when he first came to the Penguins from Notre Dame and he was healthy, he had a real shot to be a middle line power forward. What I see now is a guy who probably is an American Hockey League player, and that's a bit of a shame. In terms of defense prospects, zero. Zip, zero, nada, nothing. Let's see here. Medina, it's hard to pinpoint what's going on with Brassard. He definitely doesn't have chemistry with Kessel. What is a better question? Is it him or Phil? Also, his lack of production, I don't know. I've kind of gone through is it Brassard or Phil a couple times. Let me just tell you what I saw. It probably didn't translate so well to television, so maybe I'm giving you something that you didn't get to see on TV, unless you were there at a handful of games to have the full context. When Brassard first inherited Kessel was like, nah, brah, I'm out. And there was 2 shifts kind of in the middle of a hockey game, and I'll have to go back and look at my notes to see which game. It was early in that experiment, mid-December-ish, in which Kessel barely crossed the offensive blue line. Brassard and memory says Zach Aston Reese was the other winger. I could be mistaken on that. I apologize. They went to the left wing boards to battle for a puck. Now, a winger has a job. He looks to see if the 2 defensemen are back, and they were. Then his job is to be available for the cycle. Either, shallow slot down to the end wall. And Kessel was on the opposite side of the ice, kind of lingering at the blue line. It was brutal. So to begin, I would have said it was Kessel's fault. Then a few games in, they benched Kessel. They kind of let Phil know on December 22nd against Carolina, not cool, Phil. So for the first time in Kessel's Penguins career, he essentially didn't play much in the third period. I think he had 30 seconds in the final 15 minutes, despite a 2-goal lead. So then after that, Kessel kicked in. I think Brassard was, not playing so well. I didn't see Brassard necessarily overtly avoid the play like I saw Phil do, but it was certainly noticeable. Phil's rushing and Brassard wasn't keeping pace. Tell me who's to blame from that story. Take your pick. I know fans will side with Kessel 101 of 100 times, so I accept that, and we'll move on. That's just, hey, Kyle. Glad to have you here. Kyle says he'll be in a package deal for Brassard and Mata and Oleksiak. That's a lot to give up, Kyle. That's a ton. The Penguins do need a third-line center back. There's just no question. I know some people are starting to make the case. I think Jesse Marshall, the Athletic, whom I respect his work. I think Jesse was the first to wade into the install Riley Sheahan as a third-line center. First one to write about it, or the first credible person to go there. And I was on board with that if they switched Brassard, in the meantime, to the second-line left wing. I want to see Sheahan play third-line center for a couple weeks before I say no. He wasn't good enough last year. Just, I don't care what numbers you parse, he didn't drive any offense. I think most of Sheahan's offense last season, this is last season now, came from being out of the way. There were moments. Look, he's shown a wicked wrister this season. I mean, Sheahan pulls that back to the back heel and snaps through it. Man, I bet you that puck whistles. He needs to do that a few times a game. But can he be a third-line center for Phil Kessel in the playoffs? I can't say yes without seeing it right now. I would like to give it a shot because that would make the Penguins trade potentials. It would open the field. Otherwise, they have to pull back a third-line center, and that really starts to get tricky if you deal Brassard for not a third-line center. Let's say they do that Michael Furland thing that LeBrun mentioned, where the Penguins would send Brassard to Carolina and a prospect or an asset to Carolina in exchange for Furland, and then Carolina would flip Brassard. That's not the way you want to go about it, because then the Penguins are still searching for a third-line center. And so that, Dallas is still, I think, the best matchup with Faxa. Dallas would do well to get Brassard. And the Penguins would do well to get Faxa as a third-line center. And I think the Penguins would do well to get more than Faxa for Brassard, because Brassard is worth it. He's a second-line center who can score 50 to 60 points. Those are not cheap. Let's see here. Oh, Kyle also thinks that the Pens in Carolina will hook up for a Shea and Furland deal. Kyle, glad you're with us on the chat. No. Carolina wants a lot more than a fourth-line left wing for Furland. And yes, Keith, I saw that error. In fact, we published that in Dan's Daily Links. The error on the Minnesota Wild lineup sheet had Ole Mata. I look 9 of 10 times. That was purely an error. 9 of 10 times. But it makes you wonder if there was something cooking. Because, and the message boards were confused. I saw me misquoted on the message boards. So, Keith, Medina, you all, if you see me being misquoted on the message boards, correct them. I have not reported that the Penguins and Minnesota are talking Brassard for Stahl. I've not reported that. What I did say in one of these little videos is that there is some smoke around those pieces. The Penguins would obviously have to send, I think, more to Minnesota to make that happen. But I can't confirm it with a first-hand source, and we'll leave it at that. Second-hand, we've heard some whispers that Minnesota could become a player in the Brassard deal. Of course, this was also 2 weeks ago, which should be relevant or fresh still today, but so much has happened in the Western Conference. St. Louis is back in it. Minnesota is right there. So these teams have to be starting to think about acquiring as opposed to dealing. That very well could put a lot of cold water on Minnesota giving up Eric Stahl. I would certainly bet on that, unless they're looking past this season. If they're looking just for this season and that Cinderella run, then they don't. They lose Stahl for nothing in the summer. Or they look and say, we're not Stanley Cup contenders. Let's make a move. Let's try to get somebody in here long term. And that very well could be the case, and they might have designs on signing Brassard to whatever. I don't know. But I guess I passed along the smoke that I knew with the clear explanation. I have not yet found the fire. Jim asks, do you think the blue line is too slow even with the return of Schultz? This is what Bob Grove said today on the radio. I'm going to go ahead and disagree with Grover. Because the Penguins' blue line is not built for speed. They have decidedly gone a different direction. And if you're looking for a speedy blue line, then, yeah, you'd see the Penguins lacking. The Penguins, and how do I want to go about this? Forgive my stutter. The Penguins are in the midst of an identity shift. They are not the zippy, fast team they were 2 years ago. Sullivan knows this. This is specifically why he challenged them before the break. Come back to buy into the identity. Buy in. The Penguins are a puck possession team. The Penguins can play heavy. The Penguins have skill. Those are the Penguins' strengths. And in that context, the defense does not have to be fast. Schultz is a really good skater, by the way. You're going to have Letang and Schultz eating up, 40-plus minutes, 45 minutes a game. More, perhaps. And Riikola is a really good skater. So I'm going to go ahead and take the adversarial role on Bob Grove there. But you know I love Grove, right? Don't be starting stuff. Justin Frick mentions Puljujarvi in Edmonton. Yeah. I think your spelling's off, but I get where you're going with that, Justin. I can't spell Puljujarvi either, well, at least without my spell checker. Here's a highly touted prospect in Edmonton who's languishing this year. Another Finn. Penguins have a couple Finns in the locker room. Maybe some guys who can speak Finnish and communicate about the homeland might help the kid. He really has lost his confidence in Edmonton. I mean, really. But what a dump Edmonton has become. Just a tire fire inferno. They signed a 30-year-old KHL goaltender to a contract this season. He's doing okay. Inconsistent, but okay. And so Chiarelli, a few days ago, gives him a 3-year, $13.5 million contract. No, not like Casey DeSmith, who signed a 3-year, $4.5 million contract. No, Edmonton gave their guy $4.5 per year. And I think that might have been the last straw for everybody, as Chiarelli was bounced late last night. So we can no longer hope for that Oleksiak for Nugent Hopkins deal out of Edmonton. I know. Terribly sorry. But, yeah, look, if the Penguins can get their hands on a couple of struggling young players, I think that's actually... go back, and I'm going to give away one of the columns that I've been noodling through for a while now, kind of an advocacy column. And I hate to do those because this guy is a lot smarter than I am. But I think the Penguins, given their barren system of prospects, young players, etc., would be wise to kind of just go around the league and scoop up all of the struggling prospects, the fading prospects that they can. I thought Ty Ratty was a chance when he went through waivers to Edmonton. At $800,000, here's a guy who could put up big numbers in the American Hockey League, who just over the last 3 years hasn't done it in St. Louis or now Edmonton. I would be starting to stockpile those players, much like the Houston Astros did 4 years ago. The Astros were just at the bottom of the heap. They knew it. And they went around baseball essentially grabbing all of these players who were falling out of favor with their teams. They put together a hell of a team. You only have to hit on a couple, one or two, and all of a sudden you've got a top six winger coming out of the deal. I'd like to see the Penguins maybe adopt that strategy here in the very near future. Instead of looking at, let's use Ty Ratty as an example, and looking at how he's faded, look at him in terms of how can we rescue this guy. We've seen Gonchar be instrumental. Gonchar, and what a trio to work with. Gonchar, Jacques Martin, don't discount what he's done with the defenseman, and Mike Sullivan as well. The three of them have made a great group to help defensemen find their game. Oleksiak included, Mata included, Justin Schultz. Heck, even Chris Letang, if you want to look at it like that. So perhaps the Penguins need to find their winger whisperer. Maybe it's Billy Guerin. I don't know. Find some people who are adept at working with these guys, pump their head full of some confidence, and let's see what the Penguins can come up with. Yeah, the Oilers' management is horrendous. They've destroyed so many high picks. Think about this. They traded Adam Larsson for Hall, straight up. Hall becomes the Hart Trophy winner. Adam Larsson, fans are calling for him to be scratched. He's playing so poorly. That really goes down as probably the worst trade of the decade. I can't think of another one. Also, that they Edmonton cleared space for again, I'm drawing another blank today. The big angry guy from Boston who's up in Edmonton. Help me out here. I know Melissa knows the name. What's it's driving me. It's right on the tip of my tongue. I always want to say David Krejci, but I know it's not him. It's Milan Lucic. That's the guy I'm thinking of. They cleared space to sign Lucic. Another, goes on one of those top 5 worst free agent signings list. Kyle, you're killing me today. Penn should offer Mario's son, Austin, an ELC. Austin is coming into his own at Arizona State, I hear. Austin was a bit out of place in the Penguins' prospect camp. Let's pump the brakes on that. Although, I know they've got the Lemieux nameplate handy, right? Save a few bucks there. Everyone's like, Lucic, dummy. Yes. Let me see here. The Mormon Gamer. Oh, how would Brassard to Winnipeg work with Vegas? Justin? I'm not sure I understand your... Oh! Well, Vegas, I know what you're asking now, because Vegas gave the Penguins essentially $2 million to keep him out of Winnipeg last year. Unless Rutherford has a handshake deal with McPhee, that he would never trade Brassard to Winnipeg. That's fair game. And then McPhee might be a little upset that his checks are going to Winnipeg and not Pittsburgh, but that would be fair game. There would be no prohibition against that again, unless there was an official, or I should say unofficial handshake, Justin. Okay. What are my thoughts on the possibility of adding a Ferland and a center? Might have to involve more than one team. Yeah. The Penguins could upgrade their the Crosby wing. I love Brian Rust. What Brian Rust brings to a team oftentimes can't be quantified on the stat sheet, although the Penguins are quantifying it pretty well with a paycheck. Somebody on that right wing who can do some damage I think would be an upgrade for the Penguins. Somebody, look, Hornquist it's scary where he is right now, having 5 concussions in 20 months. That's scary. And so having a real power forward in the mix would be nice. it could work alongside Malkin, and Hornquist goes down to the third line. The Penguins would have options. I wouldn't close the door, quite frankly, on Kessel and Crosby if they got a Ferland and putting Ferland with Malkin. But you go where the chemistry takes you. I don't think, Carolina is not in a position to offer a centerman. Certainly, no. They're begging for offense, and that's why they might even consider a Derek Brassard. I don't know if they'd flip him. I would assume they would flip him, but heck, if they're on the cusp of the playoffs, maybe they would take that kind of chance. But yes, the Penguins need, Jim, a third-line center. Short of Riley Sheahan proving to me in the next couple weeks that he can hold the job, I am firmly of that opinion. And Darren Drager of TSN has reported the Penguins, that's part of their ask for Brassard, is that third-line center. So One View Gaming, I guess I've kind of answered the Brassard question a little bit. It's Radek Faksa out of Dallas, I think, is the guy that I circle as makes the most sense. Although if the Penguins see something in Adam Lowry that, that the numbers aren't showing, he is a heavy centerman. I mean, he would plaster the Capitals through the glass and back. And if they think they can get him up to that 35-plus point plateau, then you green light that out of Winnipeg. Let's see here. All right. I want to make sure I get to everyone's question. Mutation, what is this link you've posted? I don't like to approve things usually that people might click on and get in trouble. Okay, so there I think is the end of the questions. If I missed yours, do me a favor and repost it. So we've been through the Brassard situation, I think, fairly thoroughly in terms of that's the five teams that we now know. Well, let me take that back. Let's just do this off the cuff. The teams we know have called: Dallas, Columbus, Winnipeg. Drager confirmed last night that Winnipeg has knocked on the door. We know that Colorado has had eyes on Brassard, although it looks like Colorado and New York are about to team up on something. The Rangers scouts are all over the Avalanche organization looking at everything, and it's not just because they wanted to go skiing in January, although maybe, who am I to discount that, right? So I think a center was part of that deal. Maybe the Avalanche are out pending what happens with the Rangers. I'm trying to think of any other teams that may have called on Brassard that I'm missing. But really, I think those are the five that we can confidently say have or are taking a look into it. However you want to classify Carolina as well, that would make six. And let me ask you another question here. And I'll make a poll question on the website for this too, see what you think. If LeBrun's report holds water, and the Penguins and Carolina have had this discussion about Ferland to the Penguins for Brassard and maybe an extra piece in order for Carolina to flip Brassard. If you're Jarmo Kekalainen in Columbus, are you not driving to the Raleigh airport to meet Brassard and say, come with me at that point? Are you not sneaking in the back door around Jim Rutherford? And Jim Rutherford kind of gets his player, Ferland, and gets away from dealing a center directly to a competitor. Maybe a little bit of plausible deniability there. So let's assume this, for the sake of fun now, for the sake of this, that if the Penguins were to deal Brassard to Carolina, that the most likely outcome is that Brassard becomes a Columbus Blue Jacket. Do you do the deal and get Ferland in exchange? Do you do it? Or do you say, whoa, we are not about to let our closest competitor, one of our closest, who is a likely first-round playoff matchup, get something they desperately need, a second-line center who would have extra motivation against us? I'll pause for a few seconds, let you think about it, let you respond on the message board. Me? I would do it. I would make that trade. I would let Carolina recoup whatever value they wanted to as long as the Penguins get Michael Ferland. I think, of course, I said this last year with Brassard, I think Ferland could be really a huge piece and an asset in the coming war against Washington. Ferland could be a guy if the Penguins face Toronto or even Columbus. Ferland would assert himself in a dominant way over Toronto. Ferland would be able to assert himself in an equal way against the rugged players in Columbus. So I think the Penguins' benefit to that would be greater. You might have to deal Mata to get your third-line center, or Oleksiak in an asset, or Mata in an asset, whatever it might be, to get a third-line center. But that's the route. If that were presented to me and that were the best option, I would do it. What say you all? Hop on the chat board, please, and thank you. I've been talking for 50 minutes here. Give me a second. All right, you're getting in. I see Kyle on the message board. All right, Kyle, you're getting back in the ballpark now. Eric Stahl and Dumba for Brassard and Mata. I think the Penguins would do that in a heartbeat. I'm not so sure that Minnesota would benefit too much from that, but I think the framework you're playing around in is perhaps closer to reality there. Jim says no, way too much help for Columbus. Melissa worries that maybe Brass is in need of his old boss, Tortorella. Where did Brass and Torts cross paths? Was Brassard under Torts when he first started in Columbus? Or would that have been the Hitchcock era? Or I guess maybe even the Reardon era? I don't think that was part of... No, Brassard would have been in New York. I'm sorry, Torts was in New York when Brassard was in Columbus. And then Brassard would have been in New York when Torts was in Columbus. I think that's how they would have... or was he? Were they together in New York for a short time? Because Alain Vigneault was the coach when the Rangers went to the Cup final. I'll have to look all this up. See, doing this off the cuff, my memory is Swiss cheese. If I start saying, I think 5 years ago this happened, you double check me. Yeah, Tyler says he thinks they had one season in New York. Okay, I can go with that. That seems like maybe about the right overlap. What about Wayne Simmons? What's going on there? You mentioned that on the last chat. Yeah, the Flyers are going to deal Simmons. The Penguins are not thought to be a player in that. The price tag is going to be high for Wayne Simmons. I think if Hornquist were on the shelf for the rest of the season, I think you might see the Penguins take a splash in that pond. Pool or a pond. Pond's good for you. I don't think the Penguins really can afford Simmons. And to be quite frank, that the lower body injury that Simmons had last year was lower body. Like, I don't know quite what it was. Maybe it was like an arm injury, but he really just was slowed, hobbled, and ineffective last year. Was Wayne Simmons, and I don't know that I've seen him fully come back to the player that I remember as just being a dominant badass. I think Wayne Simmons was a great role player. I don't know if I've seen him return to that yet, but I think the Flyers are going to be asking for that kind of price for a rental price anyway. So that's why I don't think Simmons is kind of on the Penguins' radar. Of course, as I say that, set your watch by it. The next rumor you see will include the Penguins and Simmons. Alexander asks, is Ferland better than a motivated Brassard? Oh, boy, no. If I had my druthers, and you had to pick Michael Ferland at full steam as a power forward, or if you got Derek Brassard, at his best, I think Brassard would do more good for the Penguins. Look, if Brassard were clicking on all 8 cylinders, the Penguins would be unstoppable. 3 centers that deep. Good night. I don't know that Tampa Bay would be able to stop the Penguins, in truth. But that's just not been the case. So, boy, I think the Penguins thought when they got him last year that would be the case. It looks like everyone is kind of against letting Brassard go to Columbus. Kyle says Vancouver's been scouting Pens games. Maybe on the West Coast they were. I can't confirm they didn't. But Vancouver was not scouting the Penguins before that road trip. That much I can promise you, Kyle. I do publish the scouts list on PittsburghHockeyNow.com before each game. Sometimes I do it just on Twitter, but you can always follow me on Twitter at the Dan Kingerski. Or, hey, follow us. Oops, I've hit some buttons here. Let me dial that up as well. I always forget to use the video and stuff here later in the chat. Let's see here. Boy, I've done almost an hour already. Hey, I'll keep going as long as you all want. I've got nowhere to be today. Nowhere to be, nowhere to go. Brassard for Panarin. I'd take that 7 days a week, that's for sure. And One View Gaming asks if the Penguins have any good prospects in the pipeline. No, they have some fourth-line guys. Teddy Bluger, Adam Johnson. The Penguins' best hope for a talented prospect right now probably rests on Kalen Addison, the defenseman they drafted in the second round. He is playing for the Lethbridge Hurricanes this year. Offensive defenseman, really small, however. He's kind of like 5'10"-ish, and I don't know what his weight is listed at, but a stiff breeze, and he's holding on to, the nearest tree. He's where did I go? There I go. A stiff breeze, and Addison is in trouble. So now I saw some people mentioning Casper Bjorkquist, who's playing in Providence this summer. Pittsburgh Hockey Now, and I appreciate other people do good homework, and I think it was Pennsburg who did an updated prospect profile on Bjorkquist, or at least published excerpts of another one. I'm not sure which. I apologize, I didn't read it. I'm going to go ahead and disagree because I know the conclusion was Bjorkquist is coming and he's going to be an impact guy at the NHL level. Just Pittsburgh Hockey Now spoke with the coaches in Providence, scouts, folks who cover Bjorkquist, and he's improved every single year. But he's still got a long way to go to make an impact at the NHL level. There's a huge leap there. Again, Bjorkquist at best is probably a bottom 2 lines. We'll see if his skating can improve enough to be competent at the NHL level, and we'll see if his hands are fast enough for the NHL level. Those are all things I think that remain to be seen. Yep, see, One View, you and I agree that Addison is... unfortunately, Jordy Bellerive, I think, had people salivating until the unfortunate accident in June. I know for certain that scouts have noticed as well. Penguin scouts have noticed. It was kind of obvious at the Penguins prospect camp as well that Bellerive this season has lost a step. He's not the same player. be it his hands or all the what he had to go through. He's not the same explosive prospect that he was a year ago. Perhaps he can get back to it. I don't know. But, yeah, right now Addison is really... Help me, Caitlin Addison. You're my only hope. Kevin Hayes, not on the Penguins' radar. That's who could be well going to Colorado very shortly. So that's, I think, why they're all over each other. Pavlicek at Penn State. What was he, a 7th-round pick? It's a great story that he's at Penn State. Again, I don't think you're going to see him in the NHL anytime soon. And even if I hate to downgrade players, everyone gets excited about prospects because it's all potential. I haven't yet necessarily heard people in the know or people who get paid to do this mentioning him on the Penguins' blue line next year or anytime soon. So things can change. Guys develop different rates. What I say today might not be true in 6 months. All right, so I probably am going to wrap things up. I haven't gotten into Tristan Jarry. We're going to save that for a column when I've got more on it. Jarry's name is starting to appear in some other cities. Edmonton today. Obviously, the paper went to print before Chiarelli being fired was official. So there's something in the Edmonton Sun today that mentions Tristan Jarry, that Edmonton should be taking a look at him. But it's just kind of a passing reference by Jim Matheson up there. In fact, I think I put it in Dan's Daily Links as well. So that's going to do it. I appreciate you all. Definitely hop on to these chats and participate, please. Also, hop on to Pittsburgh Hockey Now and use those comment sections. Hey, disagree, agree, put them down in there. That's what they are there for. We want to really start to build the hockey community. What our traffic at Pittsburgh Hockey Now has, I laugh. Last summer, I was kind of, feeling it. Our traffic had gone to, almost 100,000. All right, look, we've made it. We're doing that some weeks now, and it's quite fun. The growth curve that we're on. I want to thank Shelly Anderson as well. She's been doing really great work at Penguins practices and morning skates. So that's all I've got for you today. I'll have more in print version and more shorter videos as well. Some will be behind the subscription wall for for PHN Extra. So look for those as well. If you're not a subscriber, please consider it. The year is just $21. All right, I'm Dan Kingerski. We'll talk again real soon, kids. Until then,